Hi guys, Gary Jassy here, back with another video. So getting back into the drift game now. Last video I did was about my zero build and test. Since then you can see I now have a shell on the zero. This is a Toyota Supra, which I think it's the TAMIYA version that is the rally version, but I've made it into more of a street version. I've done my own colour scheme on this, and it's a bit of a tricky build to get to fit on most cars with this particular car, but I'll show you why. And that's because the vents here, you have to cut back if you want to fit them onto any chassis. But the dome magnets work really well on these. They're not too grippy. I found with the magnets that I used on my other builds, sometimes you ruin the Tamiya or the whichever Aoshima shells 124 scale shells you've built, because as you're pulling them off, the magnets are too strong. But these are just right. Now it's a little bit messy in there at the moment, but overall I'm really impressed with this car, as I've mentioned before, but this shell complements it perfectly. Now I've got 0 offset wheels at the front, and I've got, I think, offset 1 or 2 at the rear, and this is a very wide car. And I think for the zero, this is what you need, this kind of size and build. But it handles absolutely beautifully and it looks the bee's knees. I'm really impressed with generally how this turned out. I am going to fit some lights on this car. I'll do a separate video about that. But so far it's impressed me, and it handles beautifully with the shell and the weighting. To be fair, is one of the easiest setups I've had to do, where normally I add the shell, it causes problems with the setup and I have to adjust the suspension. But the zero, I think because it's designed more for 1/24th scale rather than mini Z shells, and to give you a comparison of a mini Z shell next to this, you can see that's a 98mm mini Z shell, and this is much wider, much bigger. So I don't think the zero really is for that kind of scale, and it kind of puts it in a separate category then, because it's not fair to compare a zero, say, to a car which can go down to 90mm like a DRZ version 2 or the GLD even. I think the zero is a different beast. That said, I have been doing some modifications, and this is the standard car that I built in the last video, the limited edition. As you can see, I've got the suspension very soft at the front and reasonably soft at the rear. The car sinks down quite nicely. I mean, I've seen lots of videos where people show the cars moving off and the back end sinking down. I tend to go more along the lines of how does the car feel when I'm steering, and if I can hold a slide or transition one direction to another easily, then great, I'm happy. This is the gear version, and I have just finished building the belt version, but for some reason I couldn't help myself. I decided to start modding the front end now. So I haven't completed this, I haven't got the electronics all in yet, but as you can see at the front, I've actually got knuckles that use all-wheel drive wheels like most regular drift cars. So as you guys know who follow the channel and follow these mini drift cars, you know that the Zero and the BMRX use the hollow sort of mini Z rear-wheel drive wheels. So that means you put bearings in the actual wheel and then you put the wheel onto a shaft, whereas the all the other cars, they tend to have a axle with the bearings inside the knuckle, like here, and then you have the wheel that slots onto something that is actually rotating with the wheel, whereas with the zero standard setup, the shaft doesn't rotate, the wheel rotates on the shaft and sits on bearings. So what I've done here is I've used parts from a XRX DPA Sport. These are alloy knuckles. The red arms here are, I'll put a link in the description. I can't remember. I got them off AliExpress, but they're really nice little knuckles. Sorry, knuckles, arms, and they actually maintain the Ackerman. I've measured everything beat for beat for both cars to make sure that I haven't ruined how the car steers, and it worked exactly the same. So I've taken all the measurements and made sure they're the same, although this is a narrower setup, and I did this because I was trying to make it into a 98mm mini Z shell. So I was going to fit this Camaro shell on this car. It does fit, and there is space for the steering, so you can make it 98mm. Now, the issue I have, these are, I think, the smallest offset all-wheel drive wheels I can use without them hitting the hub at the rear hub. So there is still a width issue. I think there's a minimum width you can get away with the Zero, but I'm still working ahead with this project. But as you can see, these are, well, as you can't, I think the best way to do is show you. I'll take one of the wheels off and show you what it looks like. Bear with me a second. So let's unscrew this and show you the difference. So here you can see I've got a knuckle, got the bearing, and that's an all-wheel drive shaft. Those of you that watch these videos know that these are the standard kind of shafts we have on the Mini Z all-wheel drive, on the GLA, GLD, DRZ, DRZ version 2, DPA Sport. All those cars follow this kind of setup. Now, what the Zero has and the BMRX has more, I'm going to leave that there for a second, has the wheel that is like the traditional Mini Z rear-wheel drive. So that means that if I can get this off, there we go. As you can see there, I've managed to unscrew the knuckle. This is one of the problems I've had with this car, where if you look at these knuckles, they're tiny. So the knuckle itself doesn't have the bearings in. The bearings are in the wheel, and you can see that there. So I have to be careful when I'm tightening this up that I don't strip the knuckle. Now, why have I gone to all this trouble? I mean, why would I change a setup that's already so good? Well, the reason is I wanted to be able to fit these wheels, these alloy wheels that I've got, and they are all-wheel drive wheels. And I've got quite a few of them stacked up, ready to use, and I couldn't do it on the BMRX. So you're really restricted to the alloy wheels they provide, or if a third party starts making them, which would be wonderful. And if someone knows of a third party that's making these kind of wheels to fit the BMRX, that would be lovely. So I managed to get this to work, and I haven't tested it fully yet. There'll be a video coming soon where I'll compare the two, because this is the belt drive version as well, so I have a different throttle feel. Bear with me while I struggle to put this wheel back on. There we go. And the whole point of this was so that I could mod my car the way I want to and have the wheels on that I want. And I can see why the Zero has those knuckles and that kind of setup. It enables much smaller knuckles, much smaller. So if you compare the size of the knuckles on these, you can see, it just gives a lot more maneuverability with the steering setup and design. But I think I've managed to overcome it with my version here, and I'm looking forward to comparing the two. Now, will I actually run this with the Mini Z shell? I think to make it fair, what I'll probably do is make it a little bit longer so it matches the wheelbase and the width of the Supra I've got here, and I'll probably use. So what I'll probably do to make it fair is actually extend the wheelbase on this and use another 1/24 scale like this A86 G-Ready 1/24 scale that I've already constructed. That'll probably be coming soon in a video where I'll compare the two on the drift track, and then I will then progress to compare it to other cars and make them of a similar length. So I've got a Drift Art 2 and I can make that the same length, and we can compare how they handle. But the conversion to all-wheel drive wheels is just purely for cosmetic reasons, so that I can use these different wheels. The belt drive, I'm looking forward to testing. As you guys know, I'm not a big fan of belt drive. I prefer direct drive. But I wanted to see how the two cars compare. And that will be probably something that will be interesting for you guys who are building your Zeros and want to know the difference. So I think ultimately it's going to come down to personal taste. But this is the part at the front where if I can get this to work and it works as well as the Zero over here, then I will probably convert that one as well. What you can see I've had to do though, you can see the difference. Well, let's just measure this so you can actually see what we're doing here. Look, if you look at the track width here on the Zero with the standard setup, we're looking at sort of 76mm. So this one for the Mini Z that I'm trying to do, you're looking at more like 71mm. To do that, I actually had to take out the section that comes with the Zero. If you can see there, the standard sort of turnbuckles, here I haven't got any turnbuckles at all. That's how I was able to make it so much more narrow. At the rear, you're more restricted. And that's where I think the problem is going to be with most Mini Z shells. I think apart from the Mercedes shell, or the not the Camaro, the Corvette, sorry. The Corvette shell, that's quite wide as well. Those are two shells I think that will fit on the Zero. But I'm actually going to move away from trying to get to the Mini Z shells to fit these cars and just stick to 1/24th scale. So that was just a quick video, guys, just to show where I'm at with things. I will have some drift footage of both of these cars running soon. I'm just waiting for my drift track to be put back down in the garage now the building work is finished, and then I can do some footage on the actual track. So I thought this would just be a nice little update so you can see where I'm at, and hopefully you guys are going to be doing similar mods to your own cars, and let me know if you have any tips for me. So guys, if you like what I do here, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys all next time.